Welcome to Nightique. I'm Edward St. Pé. Tonight we meet two film professionals who work in the New Orleans area making films. We meet the producer, Mr. John Anderson from Entertainment Group. He's going to talk to us about what it means to be a producer. What does a producer do? And we'll also talk to Mr. Charles Mansfield. He's the finance guy in the film world. He's the guy that brings the film money in to get the film produced in the first place. So stay tuned. An interesting show on film coming up next on Nightique.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Ingalls Shipbuilding is hiring electricians, structural welders, machinists, ship fitters, pipe fitters, and pipe welders in our Pascagoula, Mississippi site. Signing bonuses available for pipe welders only. Positions are union represented. Come build your career with Ingalls Shipbuilding. Go to www.huntingtoningalls.com/careers or call 888-935-1507. Welcome to Nightique. I'm Edward St. Pé. John Anderson is with us.
How you doing?
John J. Anderson.
That's right.
John, thank you for coming. You are a producer.
Correct.
And you work out of New Orleans.
I do. I'm based out of New Orleans.
And so, yeah, we're both from New Orleans. And,
exactly right.
You came up to the Mississippi International Film Festival last year.
I certainly did.
2014, and was there, and you saw what was going on, and hopefully we're going to have you back this year.
I'll be back.
In November, and here in 2015, and hopefully maybe you can do a workshop on producing and such.
That would be fun.
All right, let's talk about what a producer does. A producer of a film, and first off, let's mention that filmmaking today in Mississippi and in Louisiana, where you operate from, is burgeoning. There's a whole, it's the third coast, so to speak. Am I correct?
You are correct.
And why is that? What's happening? Why have films exploded, film production exploded in the South and in Louisiana in particular?
Primarily because back, I want to say around late 80s, Canada came on with film incentives. So a lot of people got together to try to organize some type of film tax credit. And we were lucky enough to passed it in 2002 in Louisiana, and we have been going pretty strong ever since. Since then, most of the states have adapted some type of financing to help bring independent films here along with studio films. Nowadays, certain markets are now targeting certain types of films. For instance, Louisiana has a lot of the bigger films based on tax credits being 30%. Georgia's the same thing. Some of the other markets are different. The problems with some of the markets are that crew, there's not enough trained people. What ultimately ends up happening is that they go back and forth. So most of the Georgia guys, New Orleans guys, whoever has a film going, they jump back and forth state to state. So that's one of the things that is making it grow a little slower than it could grow if we actually had a lot more trained people.
So you say 30%. Okay, so what does that mean? Let me see if I can enunciate what that would mean to a producer. If a producer comes into town and says, okay, I've got $10 million that I'm going to produce this film. According to the rules, 30% tax incentive or a payback to me as a producer, that means if I hire a Louisiana cast and go by all the other rules, 30% of my $10 million comes back to me, the producer.
Pretty much, they do have certain rules and regulations. You can't take certain fees away. You can't, for instance, if you put $10 million in your bank account, you're going to actually track where every dollar goes. And of that, you get 30% back. So if you only spend, say, hiring and paying stars from a different county or different parish or different state, they may not get tax credits. So you may have only spent, say, $7 million in the state of Louisiana, of which then 30% can qualify for a rebate.
I have a question. I remember, and this is an interesting sidebar. I remember when the film Benjamin Buttons was filmed in New Orleans. And of course, Brad Pitt was the star of that film.
Correct.
I remember that seemingly just before that film went into production, Brad Pitt moved to New Orleans. Now, here's my theoretical question. Would it be safe to say that but by him moving to New Orleans procured a 30% payback on his salary back to the producer because he bought a house in New Orleans?
Pretty much. I think
Theoretically, that could be.
Theoretically, not knowing what Brad Pitt did exactly, or remembering the timeline.
And he still owns it in the French Quarter.
He still owns a condo in a quarter. And one of the things that he does do is I think he shares a certain amount of residency here and in Los Angeles. I'm not sure. I think it's 6 months. I think we just had some new laws passed in Louisiana. And now they're saying they want you to live here a year as your primary residence. But I'm not versed on what this, what is primary. Is it 5 months or 6 months? Something to that
So
effect.
if he qualified for whatever the rules were, that producer could see that payback on his salary.
Correct.
Which we know was a lot of money.
Significant.
A lot
Correct.
of money. Okay, so that's why films are coming to the South, and now Mississippi has a similar tax program or a tax rebate program.
They do. And that's what's going to help Mississippi also. Mississippi right now has a developing production team. Most of the guys are out of state. They do come and work. As time goes on, it's just going to fill up. At the early days, Louisiana had maybe 2 films deep of people. Now we probably have 15. Here, you probably have 1 if you're lucky, a crew based here, and which a lot of guys come in from Mobile, Florida, and Louisiana. So it's just going to take time. It's going to need the governor to get behind it and make it solid. One of the issues in Louisiana, even though it's a permanent law, the problem is that every 2 years there's a big fight about let's change this, let's change that. So it makes it harder for bankers to get committed to building a facility, an infrastructure. And that's the same thing that I would recommend for Mississippi. You have some type of new law passed that gives the state 10 years of the same law where you don't keep changing it. One of the issues that Louisiana has and Georgia has and a lot of the other states is that certain markets people like to shoot at. In Louisiana, everybody loves New Orleans, where Shreveport and Baton Rouge don't get as much business. And some of the senators think that they can push them to come to their area. It just doesn't work like that.
I think that, just the ambiance of shooting in New Orleans is a big draw. The
It
French
is.
Quarter,
It is. It absolutely is. Now, every story can't be in the quarter,
Right.
obviously, but if you are away from home 3 or 4 months, a lot of the advantage has been you can go down to the French Quarter on the weekend, you can enjoy yourself in between the shoot.
Right.
Other states are going to enjoy the same thing. People like to shoot in Atlanta, not so much the suburbs. Mississippi's going to be the same way. Although I'm not versed in the best demographic place here to shoot, I've seen some of them go to the coast because of the coast.
All right, a producer. You are a producer. Okay, we have a real live producer in the studio. What does a producer do, John?
Pretty much a manager. You manage and you oversee and you try to make the business decisions. Not unlike a contractor building a home. The framework would be the script, and then actors would fill in, which has a market value. Same as with a house. You build at either $20 a square foot or $500 a square foot. There's all different things in between in the house construction. Same as a film. The stars are higher. More the money for the stars you pay, the better rate you get on return. A lot of people, most producers, what we do is we organize the script, find out how many days we're going to shoot, which is called a day out of days, and then you do some type of due diligence on your rate of return. You put a wish list together, a cast, you go out to your foreign market, and you see what it's worth. And then you make a decision, okay, my movie's going to cost me 10, the foreign sales are going to handle about 50 million. We know it's safe to get that investment and make the movie.
So you pre-sell it in the European or the worldwide markets before you even shoot.
Absolutely.
All right. So
well, let me qualify by saying not necessarily pre-sell it and taking a check. You pre-certify that they're going to take it and for this amount of dollars. if you sell it, you may get 30 cents on the dollar. So you don't really want to pre-sell it, although some people do because they may need that little extra money to polish the film.
How are prices set? Let's say you have a great script, now you've got firm acting commitment on it. Then because of the star power of those actors, that's what helps you sell it?
Absolutely.
That's your selling point.
There's a sheet in Hollywood that very rarely gets out, but studio heads have it. It's called the green sheet. It lists the top 100 actors, actresses in Hollywood, and it's broke down to about 20 different categories, from anywhere from popularity to if they're well known, ease of working with them, and then what is their box office return. Like you can have a big star, very well known, everybody knows who this guy is or a girl is, and nobody goes to see him in the box office. There are a few people, there's a lot of people out there like that. Everybody knows their name, but they're not necessarily somebody that would go see in the movie theater.
Mm-hmm. Who are the bigger stars from the standpoint of drawing power? Male and female?
It varies in the marketplace. I mean, if you're selling overseas, certain genres sell more than others, and the United States makes the biggest demand for horror. I mean, overseas horror is not as well received. Comedy is not as well received, only for the fact that some of the translations just don't come through with humor. I
noticed Arnold Schwarzenegger has a new film coming out. I saw a trailer, and I guess it's coming out in the weeks or months ahead. And there's an example of somebody who probably can draw on his past, as a Terminator and such. He's probably got an international draw right there, I would think, right?
It's Terminator number 5.
Is that what it is? Terminator number 5.
So it's going to be huge.
Huge.
It's going to be huge. It's a story. It's a topic too, because when he was not in Terminator, he didn't bring in as much money.
Right.
But his fame doesn't always translate to money, because he did a little show called Maggie that they shot in Louisiana, which bombed. I mean,
that was recent, right?
Yeah, it was just released. It was in and out of theaters in 2 weeks. It was,
wow.
It was really awful, And again, who's to say why people like certain genres?
Right.
This particular producer decided that Arnold would be good in a vampire style. I'm trying to remember, was it vampire? Zombie movies, that's what it was. And just couldn't, just was unrealistic. It was silly. And it bombed. And they, hopefully they'll make money on the next movie they do.
Well, the Terminator franchise ought to.
But Arnold, it doesn't matter. He just probably took a paycheck, and he doesn't really care as much. With the Terminator, it's his baby, so.
Right.
Not that he acts any differently on either movie, but it's just what the public wants.
Right.
The public likes Arnold in certain types of movies.
What kind of advice, as a producer, what kind of advice would you give to the viewing public right now around the state? We're in various markets around the state, young people who have a desire to become involved in film, and they might want to become a producer, or whatever they might want to be involved with. What's your advice?
2 things. Pick another career, because it's not easy, or stick with it and learn every single job and be able to do every single job. Therefore, you understand, just like if you're a contractor, most contractors have come up doing carpentry work. They've done everything. They understand how to save money, how to put this thing together.
It's not a vocation as much as an avocation. You have to almost be passionate about it, don't you think? I mean, where you can't do anything else, even if you wanted to do something else. I think that if you wanted to be involved in movies or films or whatever since you were a child, you might not ever be able to get that out of your blood,
Generally, you can't. I mean, once you get the fever or you get bitten, it's hard to leave it.
I mean, in my particular life, I've not been involved in films my whole life, but involved in television my whole adult life, and I can think back as a child, as a boy, I wanted to be involved in that stuff, and so once you do find your way into it, I don't know if you could do anything else. You wouldn't want to.
No, I mean, people talk about retirement. I'm like, no way.
Retire from what?
Right. I mean, I love what I do.
Yeah. I mean like retire from having fun,
Not too many people in life find something they love to do and are able to pay the bills.
There's a story. I got to tell you, when I was in Baton Rouge at Channel 9, which you worked at Channel 9.
I did work at Channel 9.
As a young man, just like I did back in Baton Rouge. I did a story with Buddy Rich. I did weather and I also did entertainment reporting. So Buddy Rich came down with the big band, right? So I went to see him.
Great drummer.
Yeah, we got in, And I was interviewing him in the dressing room. I also interviewed Ray Charles in the dressing room at the same place. Anyway, met Ray Charles. So so I asked Buddy Rich, I said, and he was older, and you could tell he was older at that time. He'd been playing with Frank Sinatra back in the 40s or whatever. And here he was drumming in Bossier City, Louisiana on a Saturday night with the big band. So I asked him, what is it that makes you do this at this point in your life? And he said, son, he said, I'm working a play. He said, I don't need to be out here. I said, I've got a beautiful wife in Beverly Hills and all kinds of things like that. He said, but I enjoy this and it's my passion and I'm going to do it forever.
And that's why he's good at it. That's why he's good.
That's why he was the best, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, well, we will be looking for your next project. Before we go, a couple of the things you've worked on that films you've made through the years.
There's been so many. Let's see. Miracle Run was a good one with Zac Efron. That was a really good film. We did one called Waiting with Ryan Reynolds. Our companies did Premonition with Sandra Bullock. God, you caught me off guard. It's like we've done like 50 shows, but we've been fortunate. It's been good. We enjoyed filmmaking.
And your company is Entertainment
My new
Group.
company name is Entertainment Group.
Well, we hope to have you back on our show in the future, and also, John, we'll see you at the film festival at the 2015 Mississippi International Film Festival coming up in November.
I'll be there.
Okay, thanks for being
Thank
with
you.
us, and we'll be back with more after this.
Since 1849, Carter Jewelers has been a part of Jackson's rich history. Over 163 years later, we've not only survived, Carter Jewelers has flourished. From generation to generation, we've established a tradition of excellence. Our reputation is built on customer satisfaction, service, and trust. Every piece of jewelry is handpicked, so you know you're getting the best value.
Nobody says I do like we do at Carter Jewelers.
Come see us and be part of our history.
Bengal presents From One Legend to Another.
Good day. I must say I've deduced that Bengal roach spray is a superior product. It's kept all traces of those vile creatures from my home. Which lets me focus on more meaningful pursuits.
People trust Bengal Roach Spray's legendary performance. No odor, no mess, no roaches. Bengal Roach Spray really works.
With Bengal, I love having a little more me time.
And now we've got with us also via New Orleans, Mr. Charles Mansfield. Thank you for coming.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Charles, thank you for coming. Now, we talked to John Anderson from Entertainment Group, and he's a producer, and you are in the finance area of filmmaking.
That's correct, Ed.
Okay, now, tell us about that. What is your job? What do you do in the film world?
Okay, well, basically what I do is John will come to me with a project, and we'll have a preliminary budget made up for that project. So at this point, there's no money attached to the project. Really, all we have is a script, an idea, and hopefully a good script, and kind of an idea of, based on the genre, how much we want to spend, and we'll get a budget made up for that movie, and we'll go out and try to find the money. So previously, John had been going to wealthy individuals that he had relationships with, and families with a lot of money, not specific, families that owned, say, local sports teams and those type of guys. And the problem with going to people and families is, their lives change so much. They get divorced, they get married, they die, things change. And in addition to that, when you're dealing with an individual, every time you want money from them to do a project, you basically have to resell them on the project. Okay, I come from the world of institutional finance. My background is Wall Street. I physically worked on Wall Street for 10 to 15 years after graduating from Tulane, which is why I'm back in New Orleans. And I looked at this situation. I'm like, well, I used to be a managing director of a hedge fund, and once we gave money to someone and they did well, we were begging them to take more money from us. So we're trying to set up a situation, and where we're building a relationship with an institution, such as a small hedge fund. And they will fund our movies, and now the reason they'll fund them is based on the cash flow that we show that the movie can create. Now, the way the tax credits come into that is The tax credits give us year one cash flow, which most movies will not have. Generally, a film will take 18 to 24 months to start making money on. So if you're going to an institution or a fund or a bank and you're like, well, I want to borrow $10 million to make this movie, and I'm not going to be able to pay any of it back until a year and a half to 2 years. And that's just the beginning. They're probably not going to want to loan you the money. But the tax credits give you a year one cash flow of between 20 and 30% based on your spend. And actually, the way that Louisiana legislature has kind of tweaked the law now, for local producers, that could be up to almost 45% now in the coming year. And that's a significant amount of cash flow on an investment in year one. So these hedge funds now see film as a realistic investment. Now, you're not going to get a type of hedge fund that invests in stocks and bonds. But there are funds that do non-traditional investments, such as film, and we'll go to that fund and build a relationship with them. And the reason that's going to help in the long term is once we perform the way that we've promised we're going to perform, the next time we want to make a movie, they're going to want us to take more money. It's not going to be a situation where, well, we want 10 million, they'll offer us 5. It's almost a situation where we want 10 million and they're like, well, can you take 20? Because the way that world is set up, they make money based on how large their transactions are. And they're not actually using their own money. So they want to give out and loan out or invest as much money as possible in each project. So it's a very interesting way to meld two totally different worlds that probably 10 or 20 years ago really had very little relationship with each other.
So you're coming at it from the finance side, but also film is an artistic endeavor, and you know there's a lot of creativity and all of that in it. Are you looking at it from both sides of the equation as an artist or interest in art, or are you purely a finance guy?
Well, I would love to think of myself as an artist, but and someday I would hope that that I can choose a project myself and finance it myself, or with the help of John or someone like him. But right now, I really try to look at it from the perspective of each film is a business, and is this business going to be able to be profitable enough to pay back the money that we're putting into it? Now, of course, I do read the scripts just because I like to read and I'm interested in film. I've heard many people say, I remember seeing Star Wars when I was 5 years old, and I walked out and wanted to be a filmmaker, even though I didn't really know what that meant. So yeah, I would love to make movies and be artistically involved in it in the future, but right now I really try to look at it from more of an objective point of view. Is this movie going to make enough money to pay back the people that put up the money for it?
So you went to Tulane and now you're back in New Orleans.
Yeah.
You would agree that things are really buzzing down across the Louisiana and the Gulf Coast region?
Absolutely, Edward. I live right on Audubon Park, and I ride my bike through the park every day for exercise. I'm getting a little bit older, and I would say a month doesn't go by without film tents in Audubon Park shooting movies. And when you drive on St. Charles Avenue, you see them filming movies in the beautiful antebellum mansions of St. Charles Avenue. And one of the funniest stories is, I moved to New Orleans from New York, and I lived in New York City in Greenwich Village for many years. And I've seen movies where a guy is walking down, like Russell Crowe or Brad Pitt, are walking down the street in New York City, and they walk into the bar, and it's a bar down the street from me in New Orleans. So it's a little confusing for me. But yeah, they shoot New Orleans now for New York. In fact, one of the mansions on St. Charles Avenue was shot as the governor's mansion for a Russell Crowe movie recently that I saw.
Wow. Some of the big films that have been done in New Orleans recently, can you recall any?
I think they did. I think they shot, well, I know they shot The Last Planet of the Apes over on the NASA, near the NASA grounds where NASA is. I think they just shot Jurassic World. I know they shot the movie with Robert De Niro and Sylvester Stallone, where they got into the boxing fight 30 years later. I can't remember the name of it.
Right.
They also shot the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie with Sylvester Stallone also, The Escape Plan, I think it was called, where they escaped from like this fancy prison. So, and they shot in the CAC there. A friend of mine is the IT director, and I was watching the movie, and I'm like, that's right next to my friend's office at the CAC where they're shooting. So I do recognize the sets a lot, and when I'm traveling around the city, you see as many films being shot there as I used to in New York when I lived in New York.
What is your advice to young people across the state who want to get into filmmaking? Maybe some, of course, want to be actors. Some might want to be producers. But what about if there's a young guy out there who happens to have an interest in the financing of films and such as that? What is your advice to them?
Well, if they don't have finance experience and they're dead set on being in the film business, I would try to get a job probably at a production company, a lower level job at a production company, and try to work your way through that. if you already have financial experience, I would probably try to find try to build a relationship. So say if you work at a hedge fund or you work at a broker-dealer, try to build a relationship between that hedge fund and broker-dealer with a production company. Because if you can walk through the door with money, I mean, it doesn't have to be your own money. It can just be money that you have access to through your job or relationship. That's going to really put you a huge step up. That's going to get your foot in the door. But if you're a young person and you don't have a job, you're just out of college or you're working a job that's unsatisfying to you, I would say probably, try to get a job in a production company and work your way up through there. I think just trying to be a filmmaker and just trying to write a screenplay and get it made, while that's fun and it sounds romantic, is probably not the best way to build a career, because the one thing that people don't understand in the movie business is how long everything takes. It takes a long time to get a movie made, even if you are doing everything right. And if you don't have the relationships, it could take many, many years.
Just getting in the door, getting your foot in the door, and starting at any slot just to start working in the industry is a good start.
I think so, yeah. I mean, if you're interested in finance, though, you want to make sure you're in the finance department. You don't want to be the cameraman and then go to finance, because you're probably going to get pegged in that area. If you become a really good cameraman or a really good grip or something, it's going to be hard to move over. So you want to go in with a goal and make sure the people you're working for know what your ultimate goal is, so that they put you on the path to where you at least have the ability to achieve that goal.
Right. Well, Charles Mansfield, thank you.
Thanks, Edward. It was
great
great
luck
talking
with
to you.
everything in
Thank
New
you.
Orleans, with
Thanks.
the film projects and the finance, and working with John Anderson at Entertainment.
Great.
And good luck. We hope to see you at the film festival, the Mississippi
Absolutely.
International Film Festival, in November of this year.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Charles Mansfield. I'm Edward St. Pé. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Nightique. We'll see you next time.